will be informed over here also. Maybe you have studied over there also. So maybe some duplication is there. Groundwater hydrology, up till now, whatever we have studying was that part of the hydrology which is related to the water at the surface. So we sometimes call that part as a surface hydrology. Exploration and related to the extraction of the water which is below the ground level. The ground level is the surface level of the earth. Okay, so the science of occurrence, distribution and movement of the water below the surface of earth, that we call as groundwater hydrology. Science of occurrence, distribution and movement. What does it mean? The science which deals with occurrence means finding the water under the surface of earth, whether it occurs or whether it don't occur, whether it is available or whether it is not available. Distribution, how it varies from one place to other place, how it varies with respect to time, and the movement of the water and dealing with its flow characteristics, how much it can flow from the porous media. The soil is called as a porous media, so you know it has pores inside it. So in books of hydrology and hydraulics, sometimes we say we are dealing with the porous media and we are dealing with the flow in the porous media. So it's movement of the water in the soil and finding whether it is available or not. That is occurrence, and distribution mean how it varies, where it is where it is at available in more quantity, where it is available in less quantity. So that is the distribution of water under the surface. So these topics we study in a branch of hydrology. We call it as a groundwater hydrology. And if you remember, the hydrology definition was similar thing: the occurrence, distribution, and movement of the water in the hydrological cycle, and more related to the water on or close to the surface of Earth, on or close to the surface of Earth. So that was hydrology. So, but special part of hydrology which deals with water underneath, below the ground. Here, cross section of the earth or ground is shown over here. Surface, ground surface is shown. Vegetation is shown. Upper part of hydrological cycle like precipitation, atmosphere, those are shown. But groundwater hydrology deals when water infiltrate into the soil, and that after some time it becomes part of a huge storage. It becomes the infiltrated water reaches to a huge storage which is available by the nature to us, by Allah to us, and we call it as a groundwater storage. And this groundwater storage is available to us for millions of the years, and we should be intelligent enough to use it in a sustainable manner. We can use it in a manner in which it is not sustainable. Mean I use it at a higher rate than it can be recharged. Nowadays, the problem or research questions are with the hydrologist, with the environmentalist, with the civil engineering dealing with the groundwater is this thing. How to find what is the sustainable extraction rate. We know how to extract it. We know how to find it where it is located. And people have been in last few decades, 3-4 decades, people have been extracting it without without any regulation, without any control from the government agencies. So when anybody who intends to get the groundwater, he can drill a hole in earth and he can extract it without getting any license, without getting any permission. So that have resulted in extra extraction, high rate of extraction from certain part of the earth, and over there we see that the water table. So water table is at top of the groundwater storage surface. Top of it is not same as the earth surface, but under the earth surface, the line which differentiate between unsaturated zone of the soil and the saturated zone of the soil, we call that as a water table. Because of the over extraction, water table is depleting year on year on year on year. Previously, when we used to extract water, When we extract water in dry season, it goes down, but in the wet season, monsoon, and after that, it comes back to its original position. So that rate of extraction, that way of extraction was used to call as sustainable extraction rate for the groundwater. But like in Lahore, we are extracting more than what naturally this soil can recharge, what naturally precipitation can recharge in this area. So studies have been carried out in this part, Lahore, that 2 to 3 feet water is going down every year on average. On average, 2 to 3 feet or about a meter or a quarter, a three-quarter of a meter is water is going down, and the upper, although water is available in Lahore in UET at about 100 feet, 30 meter, 32 meter, water is available. But that water is not of good quality. Uh, for drinking purpose, the water extracted by the LDA or WASA people or by the UET tubers that is being obtained from very deep layers, 500, 600, 700, 700 feet down. They have dug the holes, they have drilled the holes, and they are extracting that water. So if the quality of the top water is deteriorating and if the groundwater table is going down, we fear that we have to extract it even from the further deep layers, and that will be sometimes economically becomes challenging, and that also becomes challenging because it deteriorates the water quality at that location also. At the lower layers, there is more chemicals like more salts like arsenic is available, so which is coming out of the ground and which is hazardous for our health also. So keeping these things in mind, these challenges, current days challenging that groundwater is depleting. Previous few decades ago, challenges were groundwater was coming up. We had the water logging problem. We had the salinity problem. Now challenge is that groundwater is depleting, especially in the urban environment where extraction is quite high. So now opposite challenges are there. So to go towards a sustainable extraction and to give a viable solution, people like you, hydrologists and civil engineers, have to understand this phenomena, and we should be knowing how much is the extraction capacity of this place and how much we should extract from this place. So this topic will just open the window of this whole branch of hydrology. It is not a complete topic, but you will be given a taste that this is also a branch in which you can carry out further research and further studies. So science of occurrence, distribution and movement of the water below the surface of earth is called as groundwater hydrology. And importance of the groundwater, we can see how much we have the water in the form of the groundwater. In hydrological cycle, in water budget of the earth, we have told you how much water is available in which part of the hydrological cycle. You were informed that overall 97, 96.5% of the water is there in the sea, in the ocean, and that is saline. Only 2.5% was said to be the fresh water. And out of that fresh water, bulk of that fresh water is available in the form of the groundwater storage. 30% of the earth fresh water, 30% of the earth fresh water is available in the form of the groundwater, and the remaining 70% is above the surface of earth. But don't think that remaining 70% is available in the rivers. Bulk of that 70%, which we say that that is above the ground, that is stored in another reservoir. We call them क्या कहते हैं उसे? Bulk of the surface water is stored in the form of another reservoir. We call what? उन्हें क्या कहते हैं? जी चौधरी साहब, चौधरी फरहान, आप बोल रहे हो लेकिन आवाज नहीं आ रही है, आपका माइक सही नहीं है.
Dams.
Dams are very small. Dam itself is not a storage. Reservoir behind the dam is a storage, And these man-made dams, man-made storages are very small part of the storage, which we are talking 70% of the surface water. Reservoir's total storage capacity is said to be about 6,000 kilometer cube or 6,000 billion cubic meter. But there is another big, huge storage which is also endangered at the moment. So you should be knowing about that. That's why I am asking. Hasib, Abdul Hasib Ahmed, Jawad.
Yes, sir.
How are you, Jawad? क्या हाल है?
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह सर।
अच्छा, क्या पूछा मैंने?
सर आप पूछ रहे हैं कि
मैं पूछा था क्या हाल है, उससे पहले क्या पूछा था?
सर नहीं पता चला।
अच्छा, वेरी गुड। चलो मैं बता देता हूँ। मैंने पूछा था, I was telling that 30% of the fresh water is stored as groundwater. 30% of the total fresh water is stored as groundwater. तो बाकी 70% कहाँ है? 70% is above the ground on the surface. Out of that, a huge volume of water is stored in a special kind of storage. One of the students, Farhan, told me, sir, that is a reservoir and dams. मैंने कहा नहीं, वो नहीं है।
सर ओशन में
फ्रेश वाटर की
डैम
बात होती है, ये ओशन वाला जो कह रहे हैं ना, वो कंटेक्स्ट क्यों भूल गया? वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट फ्रेश वाटर।
सर ग्लेशियर्स।
हाँ जी, अब सही है फरहान। ये
सर वो फ्रेश
ग्लेशियर जो है ना,
वाटर ग्लेशियर्स और डैम्स वगैरह में।
जवाब आप डैम्स का कह रहे हो?
यस सर, ग्लेशियर्स और डैम्स।
हाँ ठीक है, अगर ग्लेशियर का नाम ले लिया तो फिर ठीक है। पोलर आइस, that is huge glacier, and glaciers other than the poles like Himalayan glacier and Karakoram glacier. They are the big storage of water. And I told you that they are endangered. They are endangered because of the climate variation, because of the temperature rising. So it has been seen that their melting process have enhanced. So that storage is being released. So that I wanted to point out that we have a big storage at the surface stored for the humankind by the nature in the form of the polar ice and the glacier in the alpine ranges and in the Himalayan ranges. But at the moment, our topic is not the surface water, so let us go back to the groundwater. So 30% of the fresh water is considered to be available as groundwater. So it's a huge storage. Out of the total storage, out of the total fresh water, just a few percent is available in the rivers. I think what, if I remember correctly, 0.01% or 1% something was available in the rivers, which are moving in the rivers. That we store in the dams and reservoirs. So larger storage, more than the river water, is available as a groundwater. First, when people start using water, first thing they use is the surface water. When their needs enhance, then they go towards the groundwater. And for last few centuries, people are habitual of using this groundwater. Relatively, it is pollution free. This groundwater is pollution free, and our the user of water, we consider 3 or 4 main users of water. One is agriculture sector, the biggest user of the water, agriculture purpose, agriculture sector. Another huge user of water we consider is urban sector, or water required for drinking purpose. So that is the urban water supply. Another huge sector of water use is industrial. So agriculture mostly using most of the places agriculture is using surface water, and at some part, if the groundwater is of good quality, people are enhancing their supplies through groundwater. But still, the bulk part used by the agriculture sector is from the surface. But as far as urban sector is concerned, like Lahore, like Islamabad, like other places, as far as urban sector is concerned, people are using most of the water from the groundwater extraction, except for those areas where groundwater is not available. For example, in Karachi, we cannot think of using groundwater because that is, although water is available at 1 meter depth or close to the ground, but that is saline. So similarly, Islamabad don't have much groundwater. They are using surface water sources. But Lahore and cities like these, which have good quality groundwater available within the uh, feasible economical range of depth, people are using. So it is estimated 90 or more than 90% of the urban supplies are coming from the groundwater. Same is the situation for the industrial sector. They are also heavily using the groundwater. So domestic and industrial users are the bulk user of the groundwater, and maybe by volume agriculture sector is even bigger user, but by percentage of their total use agriculture, they are the less dependent on the groundwater. In Punjab, it is expected that if in Pakistan, if we are diverting about 100 million acre feet of the water towards the canals on a year, so about 50 or 40 million acre feet we extract from the ground. So one third or one half of the our surface supplies, equal to half of the surface supply we get from the groundwater also. So if I say total is 150, so we can say that one third is we are getting from the groundwater for agriculture purpose. So that is how the case is. So it is important in our overall water use, in overall water budget. So that's why its study is important. After rainfall and surface water, groundwater is the next most important water source for agriculture. So that is true. After the surface water, agriculture is heavily dependent upon the groundwater. Aside from the direct use groundwater, the good thing about the groundwater is if you don't use it, it does not vanish away. It remains over there. While it is not true for the surface water. If a canal is giving you the surface water, so if you don't use it, it will be drained away. It will be gone or evaporated. If till you have some storage available. Usually we don't have storages available close to our farmland, close to our agriculture land. Storages are available in the upper regions. So if some water is released from that region, so then we have to utilize it, otherwise it will be wasted. While this is not the case for groundwater. If we need it, we open the pump, we start the pump, and we use it. If we don't need it, we shut off the pump, and that storage remain with us, the groundwater storage remain with us. So most of the perennial streams were those streams which run throughout the year. If you remember, we studied perennial stream, ephemeral streams, intermittent streams. So perennial streams run throughout the year. Annual streams these are throughout the year. So, but we know we don't get the rainfall throughout the year. So how they are running? So they are actually running because of the springs coming from the groundwater. So perennial streams are dependent upon subsurface or groundwater. They are connected with some groundwater bodies, and groundwater is contributing towards them. So that's why they become perennial or annual flowing stream. The quantification of the groundwater in graphical form is shown over here. Total water on the globe. If somebody remember the quantity over here, quantity is not mentioned. If anybody remember your memory, that is the test of your memory. Total global water हम तकरीबन कितना बोलते हैं? I remember some figure like 1.4 or 1.39 something billion kilometer cube. Please correct if I'm wrong.
1.3.
1.39 something, 38 something. That is about 1.4.
1.386.
आगे units. Units are important. So that was kilometer cube, I know, but there was billions, I think, along with that billions kilometer cube.
1.386 billion. Yes, sir.
Billion kilometer.
Billion kilometer cube.
Out of that, most of it is in oceans, and still we are not using it for our. So only 2.5% is fresh water, and I tell you, out of this 2.5%, bulk is stored in the glaciers and ice caps. So out of the fresh water, if we take out the glaciers and ice cap as our storage, which maybe next generations will be using, or they have to use it because they will be melting, uh, then currently what available water is groundwater and this surface water. So 30% of the fresh water, not the total water, is groundwater, and out of the 2%, uh, only how much percent is available in rivers. So that is what is available in the rivers, which we talk and which we store in the reservoirs and dams and barrages and canals. 0.46% of the 2.5% of the this 1.3% of the surface water. 0.46% of 1.3%, which is a part of the total waters. So very small quantities available in rivers, and that small quantity sometimes make a havoc on the earth in the form of the floods. When they come quickly, that water is released by the nature quickly, we see floods. Otherwise, with respect to the total quantity on the earth, that's a very minute quantity. Okay, how the groundwater is available? Groundwater is available because of special characteristics of the soil. Soil is not only solids, so it has the three phases combined together. It has some part covered with the solids, some part covered with the air, some part covered with the water. So the pores between the soil particles, that gives a storage place for water. So groundwater occurs in the soil because of the pores available between the soil particles. Thanks, soil is not tightly packed. If it was throughout the earth, it was tightly packed, then we would not have having such a huge storage of water. So going into the ground, when water precipitation occurs or when a river is running through a land, infiltration do occur through the rivers or from the precipitation. So it goes into the upper part of the soil first, and this part of the soil is upper part of the soil is also called as unsaturated zone or aeration zone, or another name is Widow's zone. So different names are there for the upper part of the soil, and then it reaches to the lower part of the soil where all the pores are filled with the water. So that part of the soil in which all the pores are filled with water and no air is available over there. So that part of the soil we call as the groundwater. The upper part, which has some air available and some water available in the pores, so that part is called as aeration zone or unsaturated zone or widow's zone. So the borderline between the saturated zone and unsaturated zone, that we call as a water table. जो इसके demarcation है, the demarcation or the line which separates the, so that is, there is no line available over there. We can judge whether it is a water table line or not from the saturation. If all the pores are filled with water, we say this is a water table line. Above that, we will be having unsaturated zone. Above the water table, there is a small depth or small height in which water rise because of the capillary action. You studied in fluid mechanics 1, capillary action, because of adhesion between water molecules and the surrounding surface glass body or the soil itself. So water can cling a little bit, water can rise a little bit to higher level than its original levels. So that rise is called as the capillary rise or capillary fringe. And in that part also, water is saturated, but it has still some suction pressure is there, negative pressure is there. In unsaturated zone of the soil, if we measure the pressure through the absolute pressure gauge, if we measure the pressure, we will see in unsaturated zone of the soil, pressure is below the atmospheric pressure. But if we see the pressure at the water table line, pressure is same as the atmospheric pressure. So above the water table line in the soil, there is below atmospheric pressure, and sometimes we call this as negative pressure, sometimes we call it as a suction pressure. It has tendency to attract the water. The unsaturated zone has tendency to accept water or attract the water. So because of the lower pressure over here. So we say unsaturated zone have suction pressure, and at the water table, the pressure is same as the atmospheric pressure. As we go below the water table line, the pressure enhances in the same way as pressure enhances in a water tank. And that way of enhancing of the pressure in water tank, we say that this is the hydrostatic pressure. As you go down more depth, more will be the pressure. And we know how the pressure increases. We can find the pressure from the top of the water tank to a depth below the top surface by gamma times H, a unit weight of the water times depth as we go down. So in the below the water table, pressure is hydrostatic pressure. Above the water table, there is a negative or suction pressure. So that is how we know whether it is a water table line or whether it is not a water table line. If you see it, you will not see a line over there, but these pressures tell us that groundwater starts from this location. Furthermore, so you should be knowing what is aeration zone. You should be knowing what is a saturation zone. So that is what have been defined over here. So similar thing is schematically shown over here. If we make a vertical section of the soil, the upper part is usually called as the root zone. The zone in your slides, maybe there is 10 meter written over here. 10 meter is too high for me, so I change it. Usually the root zone varies from few centimeters to 1 meter to 1.5 meter, and in very seldom cases it will be multiple of the meters. So root zone is a top soil layer up to which the plants can extract water from the soil because of their availability of reaching of the roots at up to that point. So that is the root zone. Below that is the intermediate zone, and these two combined is usually considered as not saturated. If the root zone becomes saturated, if at a certain place water table reaches to the root zone, then we say this land is affected by a phenomena we call water logging. फिर हम कहते हैं ये एरिया जो है ना वाटर लॉग्ड हो गया, because when root zone is underwater, is saturated with the water, then the plants which used to take air also from the roots, some nutrition through air and soil and water both is required by the plants, that aeration is not possible in that root zone. So root zone should be kept unsaturated for good plantation, for good agriculture. So usually in normal ways, if there is no high quantity of water available, we have a unsaturated root zone. When we irrigate this area, root zone become filled temporarily. The plants get water out of it, and then it becomes dry again. And then we have a certain depth we call as unsaturated zone, or we call it as intermediate zone. Then as you see earlier, we have a saturated zone. Above the saturated zone, a few centimeters of capillary zone will be there. So in combine, we can divide the whole top surface of the earth, which we call as the lithosphere, into two parts, saturated zone and the unsaturated zone. Other name for these are phreatic zone, and other name for unsaturated zone is Vadose zone and aeration zone. So these terminologies you should be familiar with, please, because people expect if you have studied the hydrology, so you have studied groundwater hydrology also, so you should be able to differentiate these things. And people ask from you if you are carrying out studies on saturated zone of the earth or unsaturated zone of the earth. How to differentiate this water table and how it varies. we have this water table is not always a level surface. It usually follows the topography, and it also uh, fluctuates because of the availability of the source or the drainage of the groundwater. Above water table occurs vidose zone, and below it occurs saturated zone that we already have studied. Water table is a line or a locus of points. It's a line or locus of point where hydrostatic pressure equals atmospheric pressure. So if we make piezometers, if we install some piezometers, what is a piezometer? It's simply a tube, vertical tube which we install in rivers, or which we install in pipes, or which we install in the ground. So if we install a piezometer, so the point where the pressure is same as the atmospheric pressure, so that point will be representing a point of the water table. Another piezometer installed some distance away, so over there we can mark the point of the atmospheric pressure. So if we join these 2 points, we can say that this is the water table line. This is the water table or water table line. So water table does not remain fixed. Don't think it is a fixed surface. It fluctuates with the season. It fluctuates with the rainfall. It fluctuates with the extraction. At a certain place, if water table is, let us say, is having a smooth line, and I install a tube well over there, and I start running that tube well for a certain time, for a few weeks or for a few months, we will see a cone of depression over there. Close to the tube well, water table will be going down, and away from the tube well, it will be reaching to its normal levels. So a cone of depression can be seen over there. In these figures, you can see that how water table is changing. Higher the hills, upper part of the lands, like our northern part, we usually call such parts as a recharging zone. So over there, mostly the rainfall, the glacier, they are giving more rain water to the groundwater. So groundwater table is higher relatively. So as we go down, groundwater table also down, and some at some places this water table intersect the surface line. So here is the surface line, surface topography, and the second line is the groundwater table line in a certain in wet season. If it intersect the surface, so then you can see water coming out of the ground. We call such places as a spring or chashma जिसको हम कहते हैं. You can see those things over there. And usually this water table follows the topography line. And at certain places, this water table line is above the bed of the river. So that river will be getting water. So such river are called as affluent rivers or affluent streams. And at certain places, groundwater line will be below the bed. So if water is there in the stream, then that will be recharging that groundwater. So that is possible. So that is a well or a piezometer over here, and the water table line is shown over here. Wherever we have the atmospheric pressure, we say that this is a water table line in this. And dashed line is showing the fluctuation. In one season, maybe water table is a few meter higher. In another season, dry season. What is a dry season in Pakistan? What is a wet season? What does mean? Which month wet season is representing? किसी को याद है? हमारे यहाँ पे वेट सीजन कौन सा है और ड्राई सीजन कौन सा है?
सर मॉनसून वेट सीजन है.
और मॉनसून का मंथ भी बता दो ना.
जुलाई अगस्त सितंबर.
ओके, बिलाल मिर्जा, आपका जो है ना माइक ऑन है. अगर कुछ बोलना है तो वेलकम, वरना आपका माइक ऑन है. हाँ, आप ठीक हो गया. ओके, जुलाई अगस्त ठीक हो गया. So that is the wet season. So if we measure the groundwater table depth from the ground, we will be seeing higher depth, close to the ground. Depth is close to the ground, higher elevation. But in dry season, and the dry season is the current season, January, February, March, these are considered as a dry season. So before the monsoon, let us say मई हो गया, अप्रैल हो गया, तो वो हम इसको ड्राई सीजन समझते हैं. तो मई में या अप्रैल में water table will be lower. So there is a special kind of groundwater body which is not connected with the main groundwater body. Over here, if you see, so we call that body as the perched water table. If we install a piezometer over here, we will be seeing the atmospheric pressure and the saturated soil over here also. But if we further investigate it, we will see that after that there is some impervious layer or impermeable layer, and it is this water table is not connected with the main groundwater table. So if such kind of condition is there, although it is saturated, although it is fulfilling the condition of groundwater condition, but it is an individual storage of the groundwater. Such a groundwater is called as perched water table, or this is a kind of pseudo water table. So we should not be trying to place our tube wells or wells in this perched water table, because it will be drying very soon after a couple of years of use of this water, because it don't have a permanent source of recharging from the surrounding area. Only it can be recharged from the top over here, while this groundwater can be recharged from the surrounding area also. So such kind of water tables which are not connected with the main groundwater table, main groundwater bodies, so that should be identified carefully, so that we should not invest on extracting this water. We should dug the well up to the main groundwater body up to here, and then we should extract it on a longer time period. So we should be able to differentiate between main groundwater and the perched groundwater table. Water table is not stagnant, it is not constant. Stagnant means constant standing. It rises and falls with respect to the recharging through the rainfall or recharging from the surrounding area. Recharging can be direct from the rainfall, infiltration in that area, and recharging can be from the surrounding area. From here, for example, at this place, recharging can be from the top, like from the river over here. But this water is also flowing towards this. Like surface water flows in the direction of the gravity, groundwater also flows in the direction of the gravity from the higher elevation water table to the lower elevation water table. Like we have the equations available to find the velocity of the flow on the surface. कौन सी इक्वेशन है हमारे पास चैनल में या सरफेस पे वाटर की वेलोसिटी फाइंड करने की? We have the equation available which can help us find the velocity over the surface. कौन सी इक्वेशन है? बताओ जल्दी से, फंस गया हूं मैं. बिलाल मिर्जा, अब माइक ऑन करो. Bilal Mirza, please switch on your mic now. शहजादा भाग गया, माइक बंद कर.
आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही सर, दोबारा.
मेरी आवाज नहीं आ रही तो तुम शोर क्यों नहीं मचा रहे कि सर आवाज नहीं आ रही?
सर माइक नहीं ऑन हो रहा था, वो नेट का मसला था. अभी थोड़ा सा ठीक हुआ है.
ओके, आज मेरा डांटने का मूड नहीं है तुम्हें, हैं? क्वेश्चन ये है कि मैंने कहा कि वेलोसिटी फाइंड करने के लिए in the groundwater body, for finding the velocity we have formula available, which I think we have not studied it yet, but we have the formula available which you have studied already for finding the velocity on the surface. If you want to find the velocity in a channel, in a canal, which is a surface water, so what is the formula name? Hamza Niaz, share your views. जी क्या कहते हैं उसे? तो इसमें वेलोसिटी कहाँ है?
सर मैनिंग्स इक्वेशन यूज कर सकते हैं.
हाँ, Manning's, Chazy, these are the correct answer which I was asking. Manning equation is V is equal to 1 over N R power 2 by 3 S power half. Chase equation is C into square root of R and S. So those are the velocity formulas for uniform velocity on the surface. Similarly, we will be seeing today the velocity formula through the soil pores. So we call that as a Darcy formula, Darcy law, Darcy formula. Okay, so water also moves in the direction of the gravity. If water table is shown over here as a blue and the groundwater storage is shown as the all the area under the blue line, rather the whole the blue line is the groundwater storage. So that will flow towards the lower elevation. Over here, maybe there is no flow because water table is at the same elevation, but from here to here, it will flow. And then its effect will go to this place also. So water flows in the direction of the gravity as surface water flows in the direction of the gravity. If it rains differently at different places, so recharging will be different. And if recharging is different, so water table elevation will be different from one place to the other place. So that will cause variation of the water table, and that will cause start of the flow of the groundwater towards the lower elevation. So slope created because of the different recharge and different extraction. So that causes higher elevation of the groundwater at one place and lower elevation of the groundwater at the other place. And that difference of the elevation makes slope or gradient. Slope and gradient are the same thing. And that slope and gradient gives a gravitational push, and then water starts moving. So few terminologies with respect to groundwater. Sometimes we have the soil surface, which call it as aquifer. Sometimes we call it aquiclude. Sometimes we call it aquefuge. Another name is aquitard. So these we should be able to differentiate. A geological formation, a geological body that contains water and which allows to transmit water also from one point to other point. We call that geological formation, that geological body, which contains water inside it and which allows to transmit it, which allow to release it or which allow to move it. So that body, that soil formation is called as aquifer. So usually groundwater is found in aquifers, and we have a big aquifer available in Punjab area and in Sindh area. Although aquifer is there in Sindh area, but that water is saline to much extent. But in Punjab, most of the water is fresh, and in KPK, if they have the alluvial soils present over there, then they have aquifer also. If there is a rocky soil, alluvial soil is what? That soil which is deposited because of the rivers, through the rivers, deposition from the rivers, soil deposited by the rivers. So that is called as alluvial soil. So that has a sufficient amount of pores inside it, and that can contain water and that can transmit water also. So that we call as aquifer. So how much is the depth of the aquifer? It varies from one place to other place. If you see lithosphere varies 7-8 kilometers to 10 kilometer. But safely what we have seen is people have gone up to a depth of 3 kilometer, not below that. Exploration have been done up to that depth. For depth more than 3 kilometer, we consider that the pores are reducing and not much extractable groundwater is available over there because of the low pores over there. So upper 1,000 feet is of much interest to people like us, hydrologists or groundwater hydrologists, upper 1,000 feet. So at some places, when the groundwater of good quality is available within 30 feet, within 7-8 meters depth, then we use the hand pumps also. Hand pump can extract water out of that. But if it is at much larger depth, then we go to the other ways of extracting it. So as in compared to aquifer, aquiclude is that soil formation which has water but it don't transmit it. it has water, a geological formation or the soil formation that contains water but don't allow water to transmit sufficiently. So example of aquifer will be porous soil like sandy, silty sand, loam, something like that. Why? So they have sufficient pores and they allow to transmit it. They don't hold the water tightly with them. While aquiclude is that water, that soil formation which have some pores, so water goes over there. It is saturated, but it don't let it go out because of the higher attraction of the water and those molecules. So such kind of soil can be considered as clay, a geological formation that contains water but does not allow water to transmit sufficiently. That is called as aquiclude. So please remember these things, this differentiation. Aquifuge is that soil formation which don't have pores to hold the water, so they don't transmit water also. A geological formation which neither contains any water and which don't allow transmission of the water also. So rock is the example of aquifuge, rocky surface. So much of the Balochistan and hilly areas, they have the rocky surface underneath, except for some small pockets between the rocks, there is some soil is filled. So over there, we try to find those gaps in which soil is available or sand is available. So over there, we try to extract for some time, but then again that becomes dry. So aquifuge is that soil formation, geological formation, which don't have water and don't transmit the water. Aquitard is impermeable surface lying underlying the aquifer. Aquitard is that impermeable surface that will be kind of uh, aquifuge. So impermeable layer which don't let the water pass through it. So that is called as aquitard. So we can have two possibilities of the aquifers. Now we are dealing with the aquifers. We can have two possibility of aquifers. Number one is that one which is confined from the top, and one is that one which is not confined from the top. Usually there will be some border at the bottom, whatever may be the depth, but there will be some impermeable layer or some rocky layer underneath, or at least because of the pressure of the earth, it start working like an aquitard. But on the upper side, the aquifer can be covered with an aquitard, an impermeable surface, or it can be without an aquitard. So depending upon these conditions, we can classify these aquifers into two types. One is unconfined aquifer, which is not confined from the top. On the right hand side, this is the unconfined aquifer. On the left hand side figure, we have the confined aquifers. So unconfined aquifers in Punjab area usually we find this unconfined aquifer. The top of the aquifer is not having some impermeable surface at the top. There are aquifers into which water seeps directly from the ground above them. So there is a direct connection of the infiltrated water and that water table or the aquifer, and also known as a non-artesian or water table aquifers. So because its water table is representing the atmospheric pressure, so this is sometimes also called as the water table aquifer. Perched water table is a special kind of such kind of unconfined aquifer. A special case of unconfined aquifer is a perched water table. Perched water table is shown over here. This one is perched water table. This one is perched water. This clay is working as aquitard at the bottom, and the top is open towards infiltration, so it can get the direct recharge from the top. Problem with this perched water table is small volume of the water available over here, and we invest huge money. We drill hole and we think that we have reached to the water table, and after one season of working, this body of the water is vanish away, and we say, oh, tube well have been failed. So tube well has been failed because we have not distinguished between perched and the main groundwater body. If we install a tube well to the main groundwater body, which have a huge collection of water from the surrounding area also, not only from this area. So then that will fluctuate less because of our extraction of water, and we will be having a more or less sustainable or consistent source of water. As compared to that, the confined aquifer will be having impermeable layer at the bottom side, at the top also. So, and the pressure, if we see inside the confined aquifer, it will not be atmospheric pressure. If you drill a piezometer into it, we will be seeing higher pressure inside the unconfined aquifer. Over here, we can differentiate between confined and unconfined aquifer. Here is a section of the earth, upper area, we call it as the recharge. Geology is such that we have a layer of porous soil, and then we have a layer of no porous or acquitard, no pores or acquitard, impermeable layer. Then we have a layer of porous soil, and then we have a layer of impervious soil, and maybe it continues further. So just to tell you the difference between confined and unconfined aquifer and the perch water table, so this figure represented in a better way. This groundwater body, which can be directly recharged from the top surface, and in which, if we see the pressure of the water it is equal to the at the water table, it is equal to the what we call it atmospheric pressure. So this will be called as unconfined aquifer. But as compared to this one, which has an impermeable layer at the top, impermeable layer at the bottom, if we install a piezometer inside it, it will be pressure in this piezometer will not be equal to the depth of water over here. It will be having high pressure over here, and you will be seeing a pressurized flow coming out of it, depending upon how much is the head or how much is the pressure, which is dependent upon the ground water table of this surface also. So this will be working as confined aquifer for this area, and this will be working as unconfined aquifer for this area only, and this one is working as a unconfined aquifer. So this is unconfined aquifer, this is confined aquifer over here. If we install a piezometer or a well inside it, so and if it is connected with the confined aquifer, because pressure over here is similar to the pressure at this location, so water level will rise into this up to this level, while a neighboring well which is connected only into the confined aquifer, so in that water table will be up to the water table line. So similar is condition over here. So that is the reason at some places we have a confined aquifer, and if it is connected to the surface, we are seeing water gushing out of that spring because of the higher pressure over there. While in wells available in our village environment, we see water table much below the surface of the earth. So that is how we can differentiate it between confined and unconfined aquifer. Such an unconfined aquifer, such an aquifer remains overladen by an impermeable strata. It is under an impermeable strata. That strata can be equiclude, equifuge, or equitard. In this type of aquifer, water cannot seep directly from the ground. Instead, there are certain recharge points where the strata is exposed to the ground surface. Water is under pressure in this aquifer, also known as artesian aquifer. इसका दूसरा नाम है. Unconfined aquifer, we say non-artesian aquifer. This one is called artesian aquifer. So now we move towards the next part, how to measure the transport of this groundwater from one place to other place. Why we are studying this? Because it depends upon the capacity of it controls the capacity of the tube well to extract water. If we have drilled a hole inside the ground and it has reached to the aquifer, then water will, and we start running that tube wells with the help of some turbine pump or with the help of some hand pumps. then water will be taken out of that well. So then the surrounding water start moving towards that well. That surrounding water can move at a certain velocity, at a certain capacity. So Darcy have told us that in 1856, Darcy have told that the concept of the flow of water or fluid through capillaries. Capillaries are the tubes of smaller diameter, a millimeter or less than a millimeter. Very small, tiny diameter tubes are called as capillary. So they studied the flow through the capillaries, and they found that the knowledge of the flow through capillaries can be used to estimate the flow through the soil, which is considered as a porous media. So he found that velocity in the porous media and the capillaries is a function of is a function of I. I is gradient of head, gradient of pressure, or gradient of head, or slope of the head. So more is the slope of head from one place to other place, more is the slope of the water table line from the one, more will be the velocity. So if we know that velocity is a function of I, further the thing which controls the velocity he has found is the a factor K, which was given name as the hydraulic conductivity. The rate at which the water can flow, the parameter which controls the flow are the soil characteristics, which kind of soil it is, how much pores are there. So hydraulic conductivity was used as a coefficient of proportionality, and Darcy proposed that velocity is equal to minus K into I. Velocity is equal to minus K into I. When I is positive, when hydraulic gradient is going up, I is positive, the velocity will be in opposite direction. So that's why this negative sign is used over here. For positive slope means the slope going up, velocity will not be in the upward direction, velocity will be, that is understandable, water goes towards the gravity. So I, which is simply the gradient of the water table, that controls velocity, and the soil characteristics are combined in hydraulic conductivity parameter K, and that K can be found for a certain sample of the soil in the geotech lab. You have carried out experiments to find the conductivity of the soil with the one or two methods, I think, constant head permeability method or conductivity method, and variable head conductivity method. Units of K are same as the unit of velocity, distance divided by time. So velocity, Darcy says that velocity is equal to minus K into I. And if we multiply it with the cross-sectional area through which that water is flowing, we can find the discharge or the flow rate through that soil. So simple, and I is difference of the head divided by the length at which that distance is occurring. If we see a figure, we can understand it in a better way. Let us suppose we have a sample of the soil over here. This one is sample of soil. We have installed, and this sample of soil is attached to two columns of water. On one side we have the higher level, on the other side we have the lower level. At a distance of L within this sample, they have installed two observation point or piezo point. In one piezo point, water table or water pressure is up to H1 height at H1 head, and in another one it is H2 head up to here. So difference of these two divided by the length between these two will be the gradient, will be the slope of the head. Gradient of what? Gradient of head, gradient of the pressure head. So difference of these two, delta H over L, will be telling us the gradient. So if you see this, delta H will be H2 minus H1. So that will be the something negative. So negative gradient will be computed for this one if we move towards the right hand side. So when this negative gradient will be multiplied, this negative gradient, some value of this negative gradient multiplied with the conductivity of that soil multiplied by minus, we will be getting some velocity in the positive way. And if I multiply it with the area of that cross section is shown over here. If I make a cross section over here, then I will see its width and its depth. So that is the flow, that is the area of that soil sample, porous media. So multiply it with that one, we will be getting the flow rate over here. Darcy law is applicable for lower Reynolds number for laminar flows. Usually flow is very seeping through it. It is not gushing through it. So seeping through it, usually we can say that we have the laminar flow over here. If it was a higher flow rate over here, pores were very high, then maybe we have to use some other formula like pipe flow formula. If you have studied fluid one, I think flow through pipes. Over there, we use a Darcy-Weisbach formula to find the head loss in a pipe. HL is equal to FL over D, V square over 2G. I am not sure you have studied it or not. If not studied yet, fluid mechanics 2 will be, you will be studying it. If fluid 2 you have already studied, then that was covered in that. So if the Reynolds number is small, means it is a slow moving fluid, means it has a laminar kind of flow, then we can use the Darcy flow, Darcy law, which is V is equal to minus Ki or Q is equal to minus Ki into A. So this A is the whole cross-sectional area, complete cross-sectional area. Okay. Darcy law is made in such a way that the complete cross-sectional area we multiply. So actual velocity, if I want to find through the pores, so this velocity which is calculated by the Darcy law, it is a kind of apparent velocity, or we call it as a Darcy velocity. It is a kind of apparent. Actual velocity through the pores is not same as calculated by Darcy equation. So this velocity as given by the Darcy equation is used to calculate the flow rate by multiplying it with the whole cross-sectional area. You know, and we know that the whole cross-sectional area is not the space available for flow, because there are some parts which are covered with the solid soil solids. So not all area of the sample is available for flow. Only tiny part of that, depending upon the porosity of that soil, is available for flow. So if somebody is interested, and usually we are not interested, but if somebody is interested to know actual velocity through the pores, then that body should be dividing the flow rate with the area of the pores available over there. Area of the pores available, not the total cross-sectional area. So if we divide the flow area with the total cross-sectional area, we will be getting the Darcy velocity, which is a theoretical velocity. If somebody is interested in actual velocity moving through the pores, then total flow area should be divided by pores area of the pores, and that can be estimated, area of the pores can be estimated by multiplying the porosity of that soil sample with the total flow, total cross-sectional area. So if N is the porosity, and you have studied what is porosity in soil mechanics or geotech engineering, porosity is the ratio of the voids to the total volume of the voids to the total volume. And normally it ranges from 0.25 to 0.75, average value is 0.3 something. So of soil is close to that. So this porosity multiplied by the total cross-sectional area will give you approximate area of the pores, and that pores area, if I put it in the denominator in the quotient of Q over AP, I will be getting the actual velocity, which is at which the water will be moving through the pores. So the velocity which we measure through minus Ki, so that is Darcy velocity. That will be a little bit smaller as compared to this actual velocity. Hydraulic conductivity or coefficient of permeability is discharged through a porous media for a unit cross-sectional area under unit hydraulic gradient. So definition of this hydraulic conductivity, which controls the flow through the, so one thing is the gradient slope, one thing is the conductivity of the soil, which is a soil property. And that soil property is dependent upon chemical properties of that soil, which mineral are making that soil, their adhesion to the water, the pores available, how compact it is. So many factor controls K. So we usually we carry out experiment or some well testing we carry out to find this K value. But theoretically it is the discharge per unit gradient per unit flow area. Per unit, it's the discharge through a porous media for a unit cross-sectional area under unit hydraulic gradient. So that will be called as K. Its units are same as velocity because Q is divided by A, and we know I has no units. Hydraulic gradient slope usually is ratio, so that has no unit. Slope or gradient is a ratio. Vertical intercept divided by horizontal intercept is the slope or gradient. So Q over A, it becomes a velocity, so K has a unit of velocity. So because velocity is very small, sometimes we use the unit as centimeters per day, centimeters per hour. We can use centimeter per second also, meter per second also, but all of them are velocity units, length divided by time. In continuation, we should to understand the groundwater bodies and how much water is available in soil. We should know a few definitions like specific retention, specific yield, and transmissivity, and another one is storativity. So these few definitions we should understand before we go towards the formula, which can be used to find the discharge capability of a tubule, or alternatively we can use that formula to calculate the properties of soil also, if we have the discharge value available with us. And these equation for wells, I think you have studied it in lab part also, and an computation have been done also. Is it so? ये these equation है for unsteady flow in wells, so that you have covered in lab part. ऐसे ही है? सारे भाग गए नाश्ता करने हैं?
Yes, sir. पढ़िए.
पढ़ी हुई है, but
Yes,
I
sir,
will
yes, earlier.
I will try to go through that. So if you remember some questions, you can ask that. And I think there are a few typo mistake in the lab manual also. If sir have told you, that's good. Otherwise, correct it from the formula given in these slides. So one thing is called as a specific retention and specific yield. If you consider soil as a foam, like a foam over here, so whatever is the fraction of the water held in the that soil body against the gravity drainage. So if you take some sponge into water, fill it fully charged, fully saturated, take it out, then initially the gravity water will go out, the water which flows because of the gravity action. So once the gravitational water has gone out, so whatever is held by that foam, so that we call as a specific retention. So that water it is holding against the gravity. Gravity is acting on it, but that water it is holding because of adhesion between water and the soil. So the fraction of water held, so now from the foam come towards the soil. So the soil which is saturated or unsaturated is always under the action of the gravity. Gravity is trying to attract that. So water, because it is fluid, it will move down. So whatever is left after the gravitational flow is vanished away, after gravitational flow has gone, whatever is left in the soil after that, so that we call as the specific retention. So this specific retention is very important with respect to agriculture and with respect to extraction of the soil, because once we carry out irrigation, the soil layers become saturated, but that saturation some water out of that saturated water goes down to the deep layers underground, and the soil only contains that much water which it can hold against the gravity. So that water is then extracted by the plants in days to come, in many days to come. Today we have got irrigation, it becomes saturated. But within a few hours or within a day, gravitational water will vanish away. Then only the water which it can retain, that will be available, and plants extract that water usually. Gravitational water we consider is not available to plants because it drains out quickly. So that fraction of water in the soil body, which is held by the soil against the gravity, is called specific retention. So, and it can say volume of water held against divided by this. So same thing is written in numerical ways throughout. For example, over here, we have a unit of soil, 1 cubic meter of the soil. For example, it can hold 1 over 10.1 cubic meter of water over here. So its specific retention will be this. Specific yield is that water which is drained out when it was saturated, and then it has drained out 0.2 cubic meter of water. So that will be called as a specific yield. Specific yield क्या है? Actual volume of water that can be extracted by the force of gravity from a unit volume of the aquifer is known as specific yield. So whatever the water is extracted from the soil because of the gravity, we can extract more water out of it if we put some suction pump over there. If we can extract more water, or we can extract all 100% of the water from the soil if we put that soil in oven. So then 100% of the water can be extracted. So, but we are not going to that levels. That water which can be extracted under the gravitational force, if we collect that one and we normalize it for a unit cubic meter of the soil, so that water divided by the volume of the soil, so that will be called as the specific yield. Volume of water obtained by the gravity, so no other force, no suction pressure other than the gravity, divided by total volume of that soil, so that will be called as the specific yield. So usually this retention storage plus specific yield, they are equal to the porosity of that soil. So the total volume is equal to the porosity of that soil. Transmissivity is important. This is used in the formulas for steady flow around the well, unsteady flow around the well, this transmissivity. It is also somehow related to the hydraulic conductivity also. So it is the rate at which, you have to remember this, rate at which water is transmitted through a unit width of an aquifer under a unit hydraulic gradient. Rate at which water is transmitted through a unit width of an aquifer under a unit hydraulic gradient. So to understand this, let us see this figure. Here a cross-section of the aquifer is shown to you. Cross-section of the aquifer is shown to you, and here is the, let us say, water table line, which is at a certain gradient, at a certain slope. If I measure the flow rate through a unit area, 1 meter by 1 meter, and hydraulic gradient is 1, unit hydraulic delta H over length is 1. If hydraulic gradient is 1 and I measure the flow rate through a unit area, what I will be getting will be permeability, discharge under a unit hydraulic gradient through a unit area. So that is hydraulic conductivity. But if I measure the flow rate for the whole depth but unit width, for whole depth of the aquifer but unit width, for unit hydraulic gradient, so that will be called as transmissivity. So if I take the whole aquifer depth but width is kept 1 meter, so then I will be measuring transmissivity. So similar concept as per conductivity, but this is conductivity for the whole depth of the aquifer, not a unit area of the soil sample or soil body or aquifer. So that is how they are related. So when we divide the transmissivity by the depth of the, if B is the depth of the aquifer, if I divide this transmissivity by the B, so I will be getting conductivity. So T divided by B will be giving me K multiplied by B will be giving me T. So this figure is very good to understand it. First understand what is the conductivity. So that is the flow rate. If you remember that formula of conductivity, you will be knowing this definition. Formula of conductivity becomes K is equal to Q over IA. So now state it in words. The flow rate per unit hydraulic gradient per unit area. So if hydraulic gradient is kept as 1 meter per meter, let us say, and I measure the flow rate out of a 1 meter by 1 meter window, so 1 meter square area. So whatever is the flow rate, that will be called as conductivity. And if I measure the flow rate from a whole depth of the aquifer of height B, aquifer height B, then I will be saying this is transmissivity. So in this way, we can relate how transmissivity and the conductivity are related. If we divide T with the B, B is the height. Usually we use B for the breadth, but here it is aquifer height. So if I divide it, if I multiply K with the B or divide T with the B, we will be getting the other thing. Okay, hopefully you got it. So units of K was what? Unit of K was velocity unit, length over time, while unit of T will be meter square per time or centimeter square per time, something like that, or discharge per unit width per unit gradient. T will be Q over depth of the aquifer, something like that. So units you can find from here. If K has the unit of meter per second, so transmissivity we will be having unit of meter square per second. A similar concept is there, and storativity, important parameters in groundwater hydrology. Storativity. It is defined as the volume of water that an aquifer releases from storage. Volume of water which an aquifer releases from storage when per unit surface area of the aquifer per unit change in head normal to the surface area. For example, we have this whole storage, or let us say we have this storage. Out of this whole storage, if I take a unit area of the storage, so that is the right hand side part, out of the total this storage, I have taken a unit area over here. So how much water it will release to change its storage by 1 feet? If the water table reduced by 1 feet, how much water it has to give out? Or if the water table go up, how much water I have to put into this storage? So that is called as a storativity or storage coefficient or coefficient of storage, and represented by capital S. So it is a product of the specific storage and thickness of the aquifer layer. Specific storage is what? It is the volume of the water that a unit volume. In the previous, it was not flow extracted from a unit volume. That was from the whole storage. And from the whole storage, and it means height was not limited, but area was limited to a unit area in the previous. So water released from an aquifer per unit surface area of the aquifer per unit change in head. But specific storage is the volume of the water released from a unit volume of the aquifer, from a unit volume of the aquifer, means unit area and the unit height. So we take a unit volume of the storage, whatever will be the water released if water table depth changes by 1 feet or a unit value. So that will be the specific storage. Specific storage, if I multiply with the height of the aquifer B, we get the storativity coefficient or storage coefficient. So that is how they are related. We have in case of wells or tube wells, we can have two kind of condition with respect to variation in time. Like we have the steady flow and unsteady flow in channels also. The flow which are steady and unsteady flow in pipes also. Similarly, we can have the steady condition in in groundwater bodies, and we can have unsteady condition in the groundwater body. So when a well is pumped, water is removed from the aquifer surrounding the well and water table lowers. When I start pumping, initially, let us say water table is horizontal. So when I start pumping out, water table close to the pump will go down, go down, go down. So we will be having initially an unsteadiness in the flow condition. Water table will be going down, going down. Then once a condition will be reached, then that the further drawdown of the water table is not happening. Whatever is being extracted from the tube well or the well, same is being compensated from the surrounding area. So we will be having a constant cone of depression like this. Originally, let us say this dashed line was the water table line. After some time of continuous operation of the well, if Q is taken out, same Q is being recharged from the surrounding area, same Q is being delivered from the surrounding area. Then this cone will come to a constant condition, steady condition. So that condition is called as a steady flow condition, steady state condition in case of wells. When cone of depression becomes stagnant, cone of depression becomes constant. Once I close that tube well, when I shut off that tube well, cone of depression will try to regain its original position, and water table will be original position will be obtained back. So we can analyze the water status, groundwater status in two conditions. One is called as the steady state condition, and one we call as unsteady state condition. To estimate the parameters of the soil, we can carry out the lab tests, and we can carry out the field test also. Hydraulic conductivity can be measured in the lab if we bring the sample of the soil, and we can carry out the its hydraulic conductivity test in the laboratory. We call it constant head permeability test or falling head permeability test. Two tests are there to find K. But keep in mind, while you bring the sample from the site to the lab, that becomes undisturbed sample. That becomes disturbed sample. That becomes this. So conductivity you are measuring is for a disturbed sample. So if you want to know true value of the conductivity, then field tests are required. So some of the field tests are written over here: single piezometer test, another one is Becker test, another one is called as pumping test, widely used in this pumping test. It can be carried out in steady state condition, it can be carried out in unsteady state condition. If you want to know more about Becker test, so here is a link. These two tests, lab tests, are studied in geotech, and they carry it out in the laboratory also. So we will be talking about the formula which deal with the steady state flow, which deal with the non-steady state flow condition. If it is a steady state condition, the cone of depression will be seen like this. We have a tube well over here. We have a confined aquifer over here, having an impermeable layer here, impermeable layer at the bottom. Height of this aquifer is B. In steady state condition, after some time, this cone of depression will be constant. If we install two observation wells at distance R1 from the tube well, and another one at a distance R2 from the tube well, they will be showing you the effect of the this cone of depression. So at one observation well at R1, if head is H1, in another well if head is H2, So we can find this their distance from each other, R2 minus R1, and the head difference is H2 minus H1 delta H over there. So we can find the gradient over here, and so we can estimate the velocity. And if we multiply that with the flow area, we can have the idea of discharge through this. Discharge will be equal to area times velocity, K into dy over dx, or dh over dl. So this is hydraulic gradient, this is conductivity. So this part is taking care of the velocity. This part is taking care of flow area. At a certain section away from the well, for example, this place, if it is at x distance, and if it has a depth of y over here, so the flow area will be the periphery of this one, because this is surrounding all around this well. This is not only at this place. If you see from the plan view, this will be a circle in the plan view. So its periphery or circumference is 2 pi into distance x over here. So 2 pi x gives me the periphery or circumference of that point, multiply with the depth of water at that point, that is the y. So this actually gives me the flow area through which the water has to pass over here. So multiply with the velocity gives me the discharge. If we integrate it, we can get a formula of the discharge in a pump in steady state condition. In steady state condition, that is written as this one, and this is known as a theme formula also. Theme formula. So Q is equal to pi k H2 square minus H1 square divided by log of R2, or natural log of R2 or R1. If we rearrange it, we can find K value, conductivity, equal to Q into log R2 or R1 pi H. You see, what is a pumping test? We install a pump, we run it for a certain time, and after a few days, after a few weeks, we say now steady state condition have obtained. And these observation well can also tell us if the steady state condition have obtained or not. If from one observation today to the next observation, maybe tomorrow, if their water level remain constant, whatever we have measured H1 today, tomorrow is also same H1 is there, although 2 wells is working. So then we say steady state condition have obtained. Once steady state condition have been obtained, measure this H1, measure this H2, measure this R1, measure this R2, measure this Q also, and then put it into this formula, and K at the site conductivity of this soil. Maybe it is a very homogeneous soil, maybe it is a heterogeneous soil. So average K we can estimate from the pumping well test, as I have informed you over here. So this formula can be used, theme formula can be used to find the conductivity. And if conductivity is known to you, multiply it with the B, or the height of the aquifer, you get the transmissivity. Similar thing you have studied in the lab for the unsteady flow condition. These have given us the relationship between the drawdown. Z is representing the drawdown, Q is the flow through the pump, T is the transmissivity, pi we know 22 over 7. Thies says that drawdown is equal to Q over 4 pi T into integral of a function U in the denominator and exponent of minus U. So this integral is called as the well function of U, and it is represented by W of U, well function of U. This integral cannot be calculated analytically. From the experiments, they have found that this integral is equal, or from the approximate analysis, finite difference method they have used, they have found that this well function is equal to minus 0.57 minus log U plus U whole exponential series over here. So if we have tables available for a certain value of U, well function WU can be found from that table, or we can use this equation. What is U? U is parameter which is dependent upon the soil characteristics, storativity and transmissivity, and distance at which we are observing the drawdown, which are observing the heads. So R square into S over 4 capital T into small t. Small t is representing the time between two observations. time between which the drawdown has been carried out. While we use this unsteady flow formula, a non-equilibrium flow formula, we don't need two observation wells. We need only one observation well in which we measure the drawdown between two time steps. We don't have to wait for the steady state condition. So we start the tube well during unsteady flow condition between two time steps. We measure the drawdown, that is Z. We measure the discharge, which we are expecting Q, and we know its distance R, and time step is known to us. So using these two equations, we can estimate the storativity and transmissivity by an elaborate method which is given to you in the laboratory. I just repeated how to do it. So those two equations are important. So that drawdown equation can be written in this way. Instead of integral, we write well function W. And that another equation of U can be written in this way: R square over T is equal to 4T or S into U. Two equations can be solved graphically by plotting type curve, which is a curve between U and WU, and drawdown curve. So we make two curves from the observed data, one between U and WU. We calculate U from the U and WU equation. We can get it from this equation. For different value of U, we find WU. So this equation helps us draw well curve, type curve equation. And another equation we draw between drawdown Z and R square over T. So Z and R square over T line is drawn, and type curve is drawn. And then they are placed one above each other through the transparent paper pages. And wherever they combine one above other, whenever they become one above other, wherever they match with each other, we select a point. Any point at that points of intersection is selected. So at that point, we read the value of Z and R square over T, and we read the value of U and WU. So four things we read from that point of matching, or we call it match point. U, W is read from the one graph, R square over T and Z is obtained from the other graph. And then using these values of WU and using this value of Z, we can find transmissivity from the above formula, and we can find storativity from the second formula. So that is how storativity and transmissivity is found. If U is small, this is now I'm telling you another way, alternative method or approximate method when U is small and T is large. So then in this case, a modified Thies solution can be found by transmissivity is equal to 2.3 Q over 4 pi delta Z log of T2 over T1. So it can be seen that transmissivity is a 2.3 Q over 4 pi delta Z log of T2 over T1. And we draw the Z, drawdown Z is plotted on arithmetic scale and time is plotted on log scale. You might have seen this graph. Time is plotted on log. How you can find log? Because they vary from one point to the next scale by up 10 raised to power 1 steps. So this is 10 power minus 1, this is 10 power 0, this is 10 power 1, this is 10 power 2. So here is a logarithmic scale, here is the arithmetic scale. So drawdown is plotted on arithmetic scale, while time is plotted on logarithmic scale. And between two main scale of logarithm, between these two time, Z is measured. So 10 to the power minus 2 and between 10 to the power minus 1, Z is measured. So it means we are measuring the drawdown delta Z for log of a step of time scale which becomes equal to 1. So one log step, if we take the time, for example 10 to the power 0 and 10 to the power minus 1, their logarithm of T2 over T1 will be 1. So that becomes 1, and delta Z we have taken against these two time steps, and this formula becomes quite easy. T is equal to 2.3 Q over 4 pi delta Z. If time are selected in such a way that they are at 1 log step. So if T is found from here, storativity can be found also. 2.25 transmissivity into T naught over R square, and the T naught is intercept in days when straight line graph is extended to Z. When we extend this graph to the Z is equal to 0, so whatever is the intercept over here, that is considered as T naught. So this is the alternate way of finding T and S. Elaborate way of finding T and S from the type curve and the drawdown curve was shown over here. So that concludes our today's lecture. Merits of this Thies formula is that we don't have to wait for the steady state condition. We don't need two observation well. In theme formula, this one, theme formula, we need two observation well. We have to wait till steady state condition is there. And if steady state condition is established, then measure H1, H2, R1, R2 and use this formula to estimate K and then find T. But in Thies formula, we can estimate this T using one observation well, measuring its drawdown with respect to different time scale, and we plot that drawdown and time scale, and we have another type curve, U and WU curve. We match them together, we move them one above each other. Wherever they match, one point of matching point is selected, and against that matching point, four ordinates are measured, ordinates are observed, and that is used in the formula to estimate transmissivity and storativity. So that is how we carry out. Assumption are stated over here. Estimation of these parameters are done in example 6.1 and 6.2 in the Lindsley book. Please try to carry it out. These are similar to the examples you have done in the lab. So I conclude it over here. Just think, if all your water were to sink deep into the earth, who could give you flowing water in its place? अगर सारा पानी गायब हो जाए तो कौन है जो हमें देगा? तो of course Allah will give us. So with this I conclude it and wish you all the best for your exams, midterm and the final term, and wish you very good next semester. If you have any questions, you're welcome. The load was a little bit higher in this hydrology subject because we had only 2 hours. Its credit hours were reduced, but combining the lab part and the theory part together, we have tried to complete, we have to deliver a good package to you. Hopefully we are successful. Please now do your part, and you have been doing your part by constantly reviewing and studying the course. If you have any comments, suggestions, we have still 2-3 minutes to go.
सर पेपर पैटर्न के बारे में अगर आप कुछ बता दें।
पेपर पैटर्न के बारे में अभी मिड टर्म होना है?
यस सर।
तो it will be 30 marks mid term. It will be combination of theory and the numericals, and जो आपका कोर्स है आपको मिड टर्म का बताया हुआ है. Course of mid term have been informed to you by Usman Ali. There will be quiz of 10 marks also. What else you want to know? It will be about 1 hour midterm. Whatever we have taught you in the class, that will be there.
सर चेयर लगाया तो दोनों आ सकते हैं।
Can you repeat? I did not get your answer. Hello?
सर ये पूछ रहा था कि थ्योरी पार्ट और न्यूमेरिकल जो यानी
That's what I told you earlier. It is combination of theory and numericals.
ओके सर।
For example, what I remember, budget equations वगैरह शुरू में हमने पढ़ाई थी. If so much is the infiltration, so much is evaporation, change of storage find करें इस तरह से चीजें. What else? Runoff, you have I don't remember the part. Usman will be making the question paper hopefully. When you have the question, when you have the hydrology paper. Come a hydrology paper. Anybody remember? So I take the attendance. Let me take the attendance first before you leave. Okay, I stop recording. Thank you very much. And I put the attendance on the WhatsApp. Thank you and Allah Hafiz.